Okay, so what's going on, guys? Just give me a second here. Just making sure I got the right one muted. Okay. All right, Tom, can you hear me?
Yep, sure can.
Okay, awesome. All right, guys, RDAP Dan here, Federal Prison Time with RDAP Dan. We got Tom Root today. We're talking about COVID-19, halfway house, home confinement, Attorney General William Barr, and the statements we've all heard him make in the last couple of days. So, Tom, welcome back again. How are you doing today, Tom?
I'm not sick. How about you?
I'm not sick either. I got a sunburn, and I can really see it on video here, out delivering food all day to the homeless and went on a bike ride. So another day in paradise. Unfortunately, we've all been stuck in our houses. Most of us are on some kind of a quarantine. Kids are home from school. Everybody's kind of going into chaos right now, and the BOP is pretty much under fire. So I'm going to let you jump in and kind of take the reins on this, Tom. We've been getting emails, text messages, phone calls from family members through core links, all asking, because of what William Barr just stated, the Attorney General just stated, that he believes that the BOP should be releasing everybody to a home confinement type of a status. And with the COVID-19 potentially spreading through the prison system, and it's already started in some of the federal prisons, people that have respiratory problems, other sicknesses that are prone to get sick easy. Are we going to see everybody go to home confinement? Is that a reality in the near future?
No, of course not. And for that matter, William Barr did not say that. Let's start with the numbers. Every day at 3 o'clock, the BOP updates its site to list the number of COVID-19 cases. They started this last weekend with 3 inmates and 3 staff. They're now up to 14 inmates and 13 staff at Brooklyn, Oakdale, Atlanta, New York, Phoenix, and at some halfway house in Brooklyn as well. The staff at Grand Prairie, Leavenworth, Yazoo, Atlanta, Danbury, Butner, Raybrook, New York, Chicago, and in Brooklyn. Anyway, so that's what's going on. Let's talk about what happened this past week. I wish I got paid a nickel every time I heard a rumor. I just quit right now and buy my island. First, President Trump said during one of his press conferences that they were exploring letting nonviolent, the very, very nonviolent, he said, offenders go home. Well, that fired everybody off. No one knew exactly what the president meant, which isn't that unusual. On Thursday, that's when the action really started. Let's see, was that only Thursday? Yeah, today's Saturday the 28th. Yeah, Thursday the 26th. Thursday. Yeah, Thursday morning, March 26th, the Attorney General, William Barr, sent a memo to the Bureau of Prisons. And I've got the if I'm looking, seem to be looking at the side, that's because I have the memo up on another screen. And what he said was, gee, we need to do something here. He is urging the BOP to prioritize the use of your various statutory authorities to grant home confinement for inmates. As soon as I read that, I knew that this was a whole lot of nothing. This was the Attorney General directing the fox to use its own discretion in how to best guard the henhouse. I don't mean to sound too negative about it, but face it, the BOP has a less than stellar reputation as far as using its discretion to let inmates go. And when it's all left to the discretion of the director, that doesn't make me think the director is going to do that much. I'd love to be wrong on this, but what he said in the memo was use your statutory authority, which immediately meant to me, he's not giving them anything they don't already have. What he's talking about here is use the elderly offender home detention program. It's in 34 U.S. Code 60549. I'm sorry, 541 for those of you who want to look it up. 34 USC 60541. And what the elderly offender detention program does is permits the BOP to send people who are 60 plus home if they're essentially nonviolent, if they've done 2/3 of their sentences, and that's not 2/3 of their actual time, that's 2/3 conduct in prison. If you were with a gang or had violence in prison, uh, or incurred a BOP violation within the last year, which of course can be a 400 series shot. It can be next to nothing. You don't get priority treatment. If you've got anything more than a minimum recidivism status under pattern, you're not getting it. And you need to show a reentry plan and prove to the BOP that if you're sent home, you have a lower chance of contracting COVID-19 than if you stay in a dorm packed with 100 other sweaty bodies. That shouldn't be too hard to prove. That's what Barr asked. He said, also think about the inmate's crime of conviction and assessment of the danger posed to the community. Some offenses, such as sex offenses, will render an inmate ineligible. Other serious offenses should weigh more heavily against consideration. He has been sort of helpful in laying some standards out to the BOP. I don't know that this is going to make a very big difference, though. News isn't all bad, because that was Thursday. Then things happened on Friday. Tell me, Dan, you ready to have me talk about Friday?
Yes, Tom, let's hear it. Let's move on to what's going on Friday, and really tell our viewers what it is that we're able to do for a lot of them in the situation that many of them are facing right now. I think a lot of people are probably thinking the BOP is just going to release everybody. I've already started seeing family members reaching out. And what could people be doing to be proactive right now with the epidemic that's going on, the pandemic that's going on? What could people be doing that's proactive for nonviolent offenders that have relatively somewhat of short sentences?
Well, I will talk about that, but let me bring Friday in, because Friday's what's important. Obviously, Bill Barr's Thursday memo means that if you're not at least 60 years old and done 2/3 of your sentence, there's nothing in this memo for you. Friday, Congress passed the CARES Act, CARES, all caps, which stands for something, and I don't have it up my screen because I have the important section up on the screen. It was a very long bill. It's $2 trillion worth. We're all getting free money. That's what's been in the headlines. But buried in the bill, Section 12,003 B2, the bill stated, and it was signed by the president last night, so this is now law. During the covered emergency period, if the Attorney General finds that emergency conditions will materially affect the functioning of the BOP director may lengthen the maximum amount of time for which he is allowed to place a prisoner in home confinement under the first section of Section 3624C2. What does that mean? The big problem with home confinement is you get it at the end of your sentence. And the law, 3624C2, Title 18, says that you can't have more than 10% of your sentence done in home confinement up to a max of 6 months. If you've got a 12-month sentence, you're going to get 1.2 months of home confinement. If you have a 36-month, you get a 3.6. If you got a 60-month sentence, you get 6 months. If you got 120, you get 6. That's how it works. What this section does is says, forget 10%, forget 6 months. The director of the BOP can plunk you in home confinement for 20 years if he wants to, as long as there is a covered emergency period, which is anytime the president declares a national emergency. So we have one going on now. It also requires the Attorney General to find that this will favorably affect the functioning of the BOP. I think Barr's already found that in his memo. Problem is, the last several words in the subsection, as the director determines appropriate. So once again, the director of the BOP has complete discretion. And because this is an amendment to 3624, there is no challenge to it permitted by law. The Administrative Procedure Act of 1946 doesn't apply to 3624. But what does it mean? Well, it means a guy who's got 12 months left could ask to do all 12 months in home confinement, even though he only had an 18-month sentence. had a guy who just started. He started a 20-year sentence. He's got about 2 months in. He could get home confinement for 19 years, 10 months. Is that going to happen? No, of course not. But people who have short sentences, I talked to someone who had a 10-month sentence and has severe asthma. The person's got 2 months in. That person could very easily be sent home. That inmate happens to be a minimum out and rings all the bells, nonviolent offense.
That brings up something that I definitely wanted you to touch on, because everybody's reaching out. They're stating what their reasons for needing to come home on home confinement, whether it be, sick relatives, sick parents, they have asthma themselves. Right now, with everything going, what would you say good reasons people should reach out to us? Who would make a good candidate for us to assist that's trying to either get compassionate release or hoping they're the ones that go and get sent home on home confinement? What are some defining reasons that somebody could actually have this happen for them?
Well, the CDC has said that COVID-19 is especially rough on people with heart disease, respiratory ailments, immune system deficiencies. And that's what I've been focusing on, because the BOP is worried about this spreading and is worried about people getting very sick and having permanent damage or even dying. The people who are coming to me and are coming to you too, Dan, saying, I'm really worried about catching this. My reaction is, yeah, 160,000 of you are worried about catching it. I understand. I appreciate that, but that's not going to get you to home confinement. You better be able to show them that there's a reason why it's especially bad if you get COVID-19, or if you are especially likely to catch it, where it might, someone else might be exposed but not get it. So let give you an example. I had a guy come to me who had most of a lung removed, and he had heart disease, and he had rheumatoid arthritis, and he had to take immune system suppression drugs. I said, man, you ring all the bells. You're perfect. White collar offense. That is the kind of guy I think is likely to get home confinement. Now, there are a lot of variations. I had, Dan, you're aware of this one. We had someone come to us who had a family at home, didn't have many months left, but his wife is a trauma nurse, and she's working. They want her to be essentially working double shifts as COVID-19 blows apart in the East Coast. She lost her daycare providers, the in-laws, because they're susceptible to COVID-19. They're old people, and they're told to stay in. So he wants to know if he can get compassionate release. Yeah, that's a really interesting argument, and I think it's one that the judge ought to be impressed with. Everyone should pay.
That's probably where there's going to be a lot of battling of who's just trying to find a loophole in the system versus who has legitimate problems. And I think I sent you over somebody yesterday that sent an email, and you pretty much told me, the guy he's very healthy. He doesn't have anything really going on. There wasn't any underlining situations in his current situation that would be a need for him to finish his sentence on home, other than he doesn't want to be in prison and take a chance of catching this.
And mom really missed him.
I want you to answer. Tamara had a question. She's in the room right now. Talk about what we just spoke about, but also answer her question. She wants to know, if somebody were to get sick from this and possibly die, is there any accountability at the BOP level where they could potentially be sued?
Probably not. If you can prove that BOP healthcare either was deliberately indifferent, or if they were negligent in treating you, yeah, negligence you could bring under the Federal Tort Claims Act. You might be able to bring a Bivens claim under deliberate indifference, but just being exposed to it, being in the dorms, you're tightly packed. You go to chow all together in long lines next to each other, breathe on each other. No, the courts are very indulgent of the prisons and the way they're run. The courts take the view that it's tough running a prison. The courts don't want to second guess it. So your quantum of proof has to be really high. And frankly, their healthcare is going to be so stretched. And I think this is a point that needs to be made, especially if you're talking to judges. When people get sick, if there's like, let's pick a place. Well, you can pick MCC New York, where we already have it. If there are a lot of inmates getting it there and a lot of people getting it badly, they're not going to be cared for there. They're going to go to local hospitals. They're going to further tax the hospital systems and the ventilators and everything.
But is that even a reality right now with the hospitals are already so overloaded? And if we're seeing society, if we're seeing our regular hospitals in New York City, which is one of the most expensive cities in the world to live, if we're seeing them not be able to maintain and they don't have enough supplies and they don't have enough ventilators, we can only imagine that the prison system is probably much further down the totem pole as a priority as to who gets what. What happens when this actually does really become national news that COVID-19 is now spreading through the masses of the BOP? Are they even going to be able to send people to home confinement or halfway houses once they have a quarantine lockdown type of a situation? And right now also they're currently quarantining anybody that goes into the BOP. I think they've got an initial quarantine of 14 days before they're spread into general public. And I think you and I already discussed there's a huge flaw in reality of how that's actually going to play out. I mean, what's the answer here? How does this get dealt with?
Well, I should have mentioned that Barr's memo also says that anyone who gets sent to home confinement goes through a mandatory 14-day quarantine period before they leave the prison. And I have heard, although I haven't seen this written, this is just anecdotal. I've heard from a few inmates who said, yeah, they're clearing out dorms to have a quarantine dorm at a low. I think you make a valid point, though. Once a prison's locked down because COVID-19 is running rampant, it's unlikely they're going to be sending anybody out. And you imagine as these people get sick and they get sent to the hospitals, you know what a BOP hospital visit's like. Unless you're a minimum, it takes you're handcuffed all the time and you got 2 guards with you. They'll run out of staff before they, as fast as they run out of ventilators.
So time is not on people's side right now. Anybody that's interested in potentially, getting a altered sentence to do their time on home confinement, I really feel like it's probably got a window of 30 days before this thing kind of gets out of control. And is there even enough staff out in the world of U.S. probation that's going to be monitoring these individuals on home confinement? I mean, it just doesn't seem like there's any actual plan in place. It all looks really good in the writings. But what happens when Trump decides April 15th or Easter, everything's fine and he calls off national emergencies? I mean, does this all go bye-bye? And I do have another question from the viewer.
Okay, I will mention though that the covered emergency in the statute, covered emergency is defined as being a period that ends 30 days after the national emergency is lifted. So if Trump lifted it on Easter, we'd still have a month. But you're right, you want to get it before peak. Remember Rahm Emanuel, who's mayor of Chicago now, used to be Obama's chief of staff. He's most famous for having once said words to the effect that you should never let a good crisis go to waste. And I suggest that's absolutely true for people who want to file now. I mean, it's an awful crisis. It's terrible, but if you want to get home confinement, there's probably no better time to try than right now.
So, question from a viewer or from a listener right now, Nazurdo asked, "Hey Dan, can someone get sentenced? Someone got sentenced early March to 6 months. He's on self-surrender in the next few weeks, so he's getting ready to self-surrender in the next few weeks. Can they get home confinement and potentially not go to prison because of COVID-19?" So he's trying to ask, can they get sent directly to home confinement and bypass going to the BOP altogether if the BOP is already considering sending nonviolent individuals to home confinement anyway?
Well, obviously I can't predict how it would turn out, but I'll tell you how I would play that one. And I think he's got an excellent argument. He can't use the home detention or even ask the BOP to put him in home detention. He's not in custody yet. but there's nothing in 3582, which is the sentencing statute and has sentence reduction in it, that says you can't apply for compassionate release now. I would do it. And I would actually be shocked if the government didn't feel that under the circumstances, you could modify this to home confinement. First thing I'd be doing if I had self-surrender coming up in the next 30 or 60 days would be moving to extend that time and doing it just on the basis of health. That right now they got a crisis because people are packed in there. They're trying to unpack the prisons. Judge, what are you doing sending me? Give me another 60 days until this crisis passes. Buy yourself some time, and then in that time, apply for compassionate release, sentence reduction. And you're not asking to have the 6 months lifted, just asking to have it served differently.
So in conjunction with that, I know you do a lot of this type of work, and this isn't something that you didn't just start doing compassionate release because of this COVID-19 craze. You've been helping individuals for how many years that are attempting to do things of this nature?
Well, I can tell you, I've only been helping people with compassionate release for a little more than a year. And that's because until December 21, 2018, people weren't allowed to apply for it. Only the director of the BOP could apply on your behalf. And naturally, the director of the BOP hardly ever did that. But yeah, we started applying right away after December of 2018.
So with that being said, and the reason why I'm asking you this is right now, I think a lot of individuals that are financially hurting are really going to see the opportunity to take advantage of somebody's fears and unfortunate situations. I do believe and I'm not saying this about all attorneys, but I do believe a lot of potential criminal defense attorneys are going to pop out of the woodwork and start offering services similar to what you're doing in cases where they've never done this before. So they're going to be completely flying blind, but sounding like an expert and probably charging, tens of thousands of dollars to attempt this. What should individuals be aware of? How can they avoid being taken advantage of by wolves that are out there?
Well, I find myself defending criminal defense attorneys to people I talk to all the time. They're saying, well, why didn't my lawyer know this? Or why didn't he tell me about that? Why didn't I know about the elderly offender program? My lawyer should have done this stuff. And I said, well, the problem is your lawyer's work pretty much ends the day you get sentenced. If you take a direct appeal, if they do the direct appeal, but it is. Can you hear me, Dan?
Yep, I can hear you. Sorry.
Oh. It is a fact of life that the post-conviction work, which includes sentence reductions, talking about the BOP's programs, setting people up to get into RDAP. Criminal defense attorneys don't do that because they're not called on to do that. If you need to have somebody tell you whether evidence is admissible, whether you can quash a subpoena, they're great because that's what they do. But if you want them to do post-conviction work, mostly you're asking them to do it for the first time. Guess what I'd ask them is, have you done this before? What kind of approach do you have to it? I have people ask all the time, well, what's the approach? And you tell them. And if they like it, fine. If they don't like it, I had a guy today who wants to do this. And he said, yeah, I want to file with the judge for compassionate release. And I got letters going to my senators and this congressman I know to have them write the judge for me. And I said, there's only one thing you could do that is any worse than that. And that would be to send the judge a suitcase full of money. That you have politicians contacting the judge on a decision to reduce your sentence, and the judge is going to say, political influence, I'm going to look compromised. The judge would either recuse himself or more likely just say, I'm going to deny this because if I grant it, it's going to look like I did a political favor. And this guy said, wow, I never thought of that. And
guys, I just dropped a link in the live chat. It's also in the description of this video. If any of you would like to book a free consultation with myself and Tom, because obviously Tom is the wealth of knowledge when we're regarding to anything for compassionate release, anything that you can do to reduce your sentence while you're in prison. Many of you right now that are in the pretrial phases where you're waiting to potentially go or get sentenced, I know a lot of you have this wishful thinking mentality that you're not going to go to prison because of this. I do believe this will buy you some time. I think courts are going to be a little bit backed up from this, but I don't think this is the time where you should be relaxing and taking it easy and thinking this is going to prevent you from going to jail. The world is at some point going to correct itself, and things are going to pick back up. So don't leave yourself in a situation where you're unprotected due to not having the knowledge. So take advantage of the link in the description, get yourself on a consultation this coming week, and we can have you talk directly to Tom about your case. But I just wanted to make sure we get that out there, Tom, so people know how to reach us.
Dan, a good example of that, and you're aware of this one, the inmate who just got sent to an FDC, a federal detention center, because she had a 10-month sentence.
Oh.
And the lawyer negotiated down to a 10-month sentence. Well, what happened is because she had less than 12 months in a day, well, two bad things happened. First is she didn't get any good time. If she had gotten 12 months in a day, she would have done 10 and a half months. So it would have cost her 2 weeks more. She would have gone to a camp with birds and grass and trees and places to walk around. Instead, she's in this awful building that's like being in jail, because when you have less than a 12-month sentence, that's the kind of place to send you to. And she said to me, "Why didn't my lawyer tell me this?" I said, "Yeah, it's one of those times the judge says I sentenced you to 10 months. You should have raised your hand and said, with all due respect, Your Honor, can I have 2 months and a day more?"
She's the one that she actually ended up in SeaTac over
Yes.
in
Yeah, and it's miserable.
I've talked to her on Core Links a few times, and I've spoken to her family. Not happy at all. She's got a job, yes, but it's like a county jail experience. It really is. It's because it's a correctional facility. It's for people that have made mistakes. It's for, a punishment facility. It's not really designed to serve your sentence.
Yeah.
It's when people violate the halfway house in Washington, that's where they end up.
And it's got all levels. I mean, it's got people who are, people who've done piracy in the high seas and murder, all the way down to, well, you can get simple drug possession in the federal system. That's about as low as it gets. You can have people misdemeanors in there, and you can have people who are looking at natural life. So yeah, it's not a nice place, but I explained to her that in her defense attorney's world, getting less time was always good. And, who would have guessed that getting less time isn't always good? Well, that's the way the system runs.
And we've got a question from Yolanda Ramirez. Is it possible they'll start sooner to let them out sooner if they don't allow food into the prison already? So I have heard that some prisons potentially are not, the food trucks are going to stop. I don't know how they can do that. I don't know if that's more of a BOP rumor on inmate.com. I know commissary is stopping. I know programming is stopping. And I've already spoken to individuals that were in the middle of RDAP, and RDAP stopped, which is pushing back their release date for RDAP. But can the prison actually stop serving them food? I don't think that's a possibility.
Well, I do remember during the H1N1 scare back in 2009, inmates, I was aware of one case. It was a low, and they stayed in their units and got sack lunches for close to a week. They weren't allowed to move, and twice a day they come around.
Yes, but no food. Just saying, hey, sorry, we're out of food, guys.
No, they can't do that. They just, that would be a constitutional violation, and that's not going to happen.
So they'll at the very least, they'll get the brown bag.
Yeah, I had a guy today say, "Yeah, I saw in your newsletter that Trump's going to release all the campers." I had to write back, said, "You didn't see that in my newsletter. That's not true." Actually, I said something I won't say on this podcast, but yeah, all sorts of rumors out there.
The blog. No, Tom's got a very strong opinion on certain things, and he reframes himself because he knows our goal here is we need our clients taking accountability. If you're out there taking a plea deal, regardless whether you had to cop up on something that maybe they're pushing you to the limit, you're taking more credit for what you actually did in order to get the plea deal. But once you take that plea deal, gloves are off. You have to be in that. And if you get the mindset of I'm being wronged, it really does prevent you from taking the necessary steps of what can actually help you mitigate your sentence on the front end before getting into prison. That's why Tom's taking the reframing from bashing the BOP too hard on here. It's okay, Tom. Right now, the BOP needs a little bit of bashing because they're really playing this down that it's all under control. They don't have the ability, the manpower, or the equipment to actually test all of these individuals in the BOP. I've spoken to many individuals that think they have it, and they're not getting tested for it, which tells me that the tests aren't available. Yes, they're making, every time a guard comes in, they're a CO or correctional staff, every time they come in the building, they're taking their temperature, they're taking their blood work or their temperature on a regular basis. But we all know that this thing doesn't show up overnight. And when you're putting people into quarantine, you're taking these inmates and you're putting them into quarantine on day one. You know, like you said the other day, if it's a 14-day quarantine and they're in there for 12 or 13 days, as the new inmates come in and then they're leaving, you know, you don't really know what was spreading on the in and out of that on the front end and the back end. So this thing is going to completely blow out of proportion if some measures aren't taken. I just don't think they have the ability to take any measures. I don't think anything's going to change.
No, I think that in a rational world, the BOP would want to seize on what was in the CARES Act and Barr's memo, much more CARES Act, because the CARES Act just lets them open the gates. I hope they seize on that and send people out as quickly as they can because they need to. And I think Warden, who's looking on how am I going to manage this if I have 20 guys in the hospital on ventilators, just 20, that's tying up 40 staff people 24/7. You know, they do not have the resources to handle it. The hospitals don't have the resources. It'd be much better off sending them home and say, go home. You got to be on your own health insurance. Take care of your own problems.
Well, I think we've covered quite a bit, and I think it's chipping the iceberg here, and we're going to continue to dive into this deeper and deeper in the next few weeks. If you want to set up a consultation again with Tom Root, here's the link one more time. I'm posting it in the live chat. It's also in the description of this video for those of you that are watching it later. I do suggest if you are going to book a consultation, be prepared to know why you think your loved one, other than you've got little kids at home and it's not fair and he's a good guy. I get it. Everybody's family member that's in prison is a good person and probably doesn't deserve to be in prison for the majority of the nonviolent offenders. However, if you have the pre-sentence report available, kind of have that ready. If you know why they need assistance, if they have asthma, if you have any medical records, start compiling this documentation, because if we are able to help and assist and start presenting this information to move forward with your situation, to helping your loved one come home sooner, this is stuff that we're going to need relatively quickly. I do believe the window of opportunity on this, 30 to 60 days before something blows up really bad to where they're not able to even send anybody home. If they're under a quarantine status, it's really going to slow down the bottleneck of this to where everybody's going to be filtering through this. And once the national emergency is called off, who knows how they're going to review this then and what might happen or what might not happen. We already know that they're not doing any transfers in the BOP. There's no movement going on right now. There's no visitations. This will probably last for the next several months. So for those of you that want to take advantage of having an opportunity to get your family home sooner than later, don't wait on this. Don't wait and think the BOP is just going to start sending everybody home, because that is wishful thinking. In a perfect world, yes, but in the land of the federal prison system, it's upside down world. Nothing as it appears, nothing that should happen happens. It's a very, very slow process to get anything done. So use what you have in your pockets, use your tools, take advantage of experts in the industry. Tom Root is one of the best that I've ever been able to talk to, and I'm so blessed to have him on our team. So Tom, what do you want to leave these awesome individuals with today on some knowledge of what they should be doing next to prepare for this?
Something you touched on, and earlier you had said everyone's going to be in there swearing that they're in bad shape and want to go home. So how are they going to sort it out? These things are very fact driven, and you were absolutely right. You have the medical records, find the PSR. I'm telling the inmates I need custody sheets, I need sentence comp, I need programming. I need evidence, because when you file this thing, it should be backed up with declarations from people who know. Doctors' letters are wonderful, and medical records. And if you're worried about the medical records, you can always ask the judge to seal them. And the BOP, you can show them the BOP, because they know all that stuff about you anyway. But it's very fact driven. So if you want to do this, Dan's right, do it quickly. And if you want to do it quickly, do it right. Do it right. It's going to require facts.
Well, there you go, guys. You heard it from Tom Root. Again, Tom, thank you for showing up on the show today. We'll have you again probably another week or two. We'll talk a little bit more about this as some more information rolls out in the media. I get my news off of Facebook and Twitter. I believe it's more entertaining and more valuable than Fox or CNN. But guys, take it serious. Don't wait till the last minute. Don't think that this thing is just going to blow over. And those of you that are conspiracy theorists and think the virus isn't real, it's very real. People are dying from it. New York is on lockdown. Take it super serious, guys. I'm RDAP Dan, Federal Prison Time Consulting. People helping people, communities method, one day at a time. And we're going to leave you today with wash your mother effing hands. Later, guys. Have a good one.